Hello everyone, welcome back to SAS videos by Stock Market Astrology Stats. Today, we will share some fun and insightful stats on the stock market experience of people on curated data, based on their Saturn position in all houses in natal chart. First of all, we want to inform you that all contents shared are only for entertainment of general public. Contents are not to be considered as any sort of recommendation or advice. This video is not intended to promote any actions in capital market. Also, all data that is used in this video are publicly shared data with SAS team. They are subjected to lot of noise and errors. No private data of any person is fetched or will be shared through channel. So let's begin with the stats for Saturn. This chart shows the cumulative returns of all houses for quick check and comparison. We were able to collect about 970 plus records and returns until second week of July, 2022. Not everyone are completely sure about their planet positions or the current investment performance. Some people just shared their approximate date of birth and we had to calculate it using software. Regarding stock market performance, mostly it's a ballpark figure from their memory. We have also averaged out numerical values to round figures for simplicity. So, what's the overall stats for Saturn in all houses? The best three houses are the 12th house with 19.5% return, 3rd house with 18.5% return, and the 9th house with 17.5% return. The difference between houses are narrow. It also shows us the insight that performance of masses are not very far off from the performance of benchmark indices. The last three houses are the 7th house with 8.5% return, 4th with 9.5% and the 8th house with 10.5% return. Why did people with these three positions had such underperformance on bulk data? Honestly, we don't know. Now, this may not mean that people with Saturn in these three positions will not get good returns in stock market. There is huge volatility and position of remaining planets may also make big difference in returns. In certain cases, due to some big overperformance, or few large underperformance of few records, the overall performance of the house gets averaged down or averaged up. The stats for Saturn was mostly on expected lines. Except for two huge surprises. The big outperformance of 12th house and huge underperformance of 7th house. Not only outperformance, but 12th house has emerged as the best performing house. This was a big surprise for many here at SAS videos. Another surprise was huge underperformance of 7th house. In natural sequence, Saturn exalts at 7th house of Libra. But 7th house emerging as worst performer was a big surprise for us. Stats shows, a lot of people with Saturn in 7th house are struggling in stock market. This is one beauty of collecting data and running some simple stats. The performance of remaining houses were to a large extent in line with expectation. Now let's move on to see stats related to each individual house. Saturn in the first house. We recorded 90 plus entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 13.5% return. This is an average performance. The average age at which they joined stock market is 30. So these people are a bit late to join stock markets. When it comes to satisfaction, we got a 65% value, which is normal. Saturn in the second house. We recorded 75 plus entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 12.5% return. That is slightly below normal. The average age at which they joined stock market is 28.5. When it comes to satisfaction, we got a 50% value. Only half of people are satisfied in stock market with this position. Saturn in the third house. We recorded 80 plus entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 18.5% return. This is the second best performing house in records. The average age at which they joined stock market is 23.5. So, people with this position are very quick to join markets. At 95%, satisfaction level is very good. Saturn in the fourth house. We recorded 90+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 9.5% return. This is the second worst performing house in records. The average age at which they joined stock market is 27.5. Only half of people are satisfied in stock market with this position. Saturn in the 5th house. We recorded 80+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 11.5% return. That is slightly below normal. The average age at which they joined stock market is 26.5. At 45%, this house has the lowest satisfaction level. Partly it can be explained by low returns, but remaining causes we don't know. Saturn in the 6th house. We recorded 85+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 14.5% return. This is an above normal return. The average age at which they joined stock market is 25.5. Satisfaction level stands at 60%. Saturn in the 7th house. We recorded 80+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 8.5% return. Surprisingly, this is the worst performing house. The average age at which they joined stock market is 30.5. So they are a bit late to join markets. Satisfaction level stands at 45%. Saturn in the 8th house. We recorded 80+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 10.5% return. This is a slightly below normal return. But one point to be mentioned is, volatility was comparatively low for this house. The average age at which they joined stock market is 28.5. Satisfaction level stands at 70%. Saturn in the 9th house. We recorded 90+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 17.5% return. This is the third best performing house in records. The average age at which they joined stock market is 23. So, they are quite swift to join markets. At 80%, almost all are satisfied, with few exceptions. Saturn in the 10th house. We recorded 80+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 16.5% return. The average returns is reasonably good. There was lot of hype and expectation around this house. Not big, but stats are somewhat justifying the hype. The average age at which they joined stock market is 28.5. Satisfaction level stands at low 60%, even though returns are good. Saturn in the 11th house. We recorded 75+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 15.5% return. This is an above normal returns. The average age at which they joined stock market is 25.5. So, this house is also quick to join markets. Satisfaction level stands at 70%. Saturn in the 12th house. We recorded 85+ entries for this position. On average, people with this position clocked about 19.5% return. This is the best performing house on records. This surprised big way. Some were expecting a lower figure. The average age at which they joined stock market is 22.5. So, they are one of the quickest to join stock markets. Satisfaction level stands at good 105%. Many got more from stock markets than they anticipated. This house also has the highest satisfaction level. So, that's all for today from Stock Market Astrology Stats. See you all later in next video with stats for another planet in all houses. Till then, wishing everyone a good time. Thank you and God bless.